All right, good morning, good evening, good night. It is another episode of the Layer 1 podcast. I am here with a good friend that I'm going to introduce here in a second. We are interviewing founders, creators, influencers, all these different things on Layer 1 podcast, and we're having great conversations about the NFT space, about the broader cryptocurrency industry. I'm going to have a great one here. I've got Gabe from Bitlectro Labs. Bitlectro is actually the sponsor for today's episode as well, so I want to give them a quick shout out if Gabe gives me some time, and I'm going to let him explain Bitlectro, of course. But Bitlectro Labs is the creators of Dreamloops NFTs, the first audiovisual NFT redeemable for physical media, vinyl and cassettes, musical NFT releases, and cross-chain drops with DeFi gaming integrations coming soon. There's the plug, Gabe. I'm sure you could do a much better job. How are you doing today, my man?
That was a great intro, Zach. I'm well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Well, we talked about maybe a pilot episode here shortly, but we'll leave that for the back end conversation. I want to talk
Yeah.
NFT markets. I want to talk your guys' upcoming drop, but want to get a little bit of your background here first for the viewers out there as we get started on today's episode, man.
Absolutely. Do you want me just to
Start from the
spell it
beginning.
out? Man, okay. Well, we can go pre-crypto, I guess, which
Ooh.
is and I want to say I'm an OG crypto head, but I'm practically you know uh, ancient by crypto standards. But so my background's actually in academia. I'm a trained psychologist now, not a clinician, not a talk therapy psychologist, but someone that studied cognition. That is how we make decisions, things like memory, language. And my dissertation work for my PhD was in behavioral economics, which is a field that's all about decision making, particularly decision making in the face of risks, the type of mistakes we make when making decisions, how sometimes we are often too risk averse and in other situations too risk seeking. But while I was finishing graduate school, I had my first crypto startup. It was called the Tokes platform. I was an early crypto adopter with a close friend of mine back in 2013, and we were mining, speculating. This was back when you got the milk crate miners mining script coins, Litecoin clones, etc. Even I remember I was out of town when Dogecoin dropped, when the Genesis block went live, and I remember I was kicking myself a week later. Anyway, so
Simpler
fast forward to,
times.
yeah, it really was. I mean, you could still, of course, GPU mine Ethereum, but it was such an interesting space when there were no ICOs, no IDOs, no liquidity pool launches on DEXs. You had to find an IP address for a node on a new blockchain, and then point your miners at it and hope you got some of those block rewards. And it was a fun game, and it really was a game.
You,
You were trying to be the first on the network, but
Yeah, you
yeah.
got
What were you
me.
gonna say?
Well, no, I'm saying you got me beat by a couple years, maybe
Yeah.
actually three, because I got in 2016 as an investor, and I remember the staking I remember the rises, the lisks of the
Yeah.
world.
Oh
But
yeah.
man, it's 2013. What other things were happening at that time that maybe someone that just got into the space wouldn't know about, man? Because how even big was
Man.
the space back then?
And it was small, right? So we would have, Bitcoin talk is still a thing, but you'd go on the old forums, right? And you'd go to the alt cryptocurrency forums and you look for the announcement tag and you would just go through. I'm trying to think, like, what are some early things there? Like, we were using Cryptsy and Poloniex and
Mm.
VerQX and these archaic exchanges that were usually run by one person. He was managing, a dozen or 2 dozen custodial wallets. Of course, Mount Gox. I was actually fortunate enough to move any crypto I had off of Mount Gox on the Bitcoin that I was storing there, like literally weeks before the compromise.
Mm.
Um, I think some of the early things that I was a part of, I remember a lot of the early script coin clone drops. So much like how we now see generative clones of, say, the Bored Apes, there's
Yeah.
hundreds of other animal drops. You had Litecoin. It was very easy to clone Litecoin into a new blockchain, a new token, right? New cryptocurrency, and then just change some of the technical specifics. You change your block time, your difficulty, your reward, your total quantity, etc. So there would be, obviously Doge was one, but around that same time there was the kitty coin. There was the rat coin. There were tons of these animal tokens that came about, and most of them are now dead projects. I have a claim to fame. My close associate at the time and myself are probably the two largest holders of Coinye, the now defunct Kanye West coin. That's a piece of archaic crypto history. You can find it on Wikipedia, but it was literally a South Park meme coin that had Kanye as the gay fish from the South Park parody episode. But we were some of the early miners of that and collected tons of block rewards. But I have some more stories that I'll share at a later time that I think are quite fun, but some that I'd rather not disclose on a live podcast actually. But
yeah, we'll wait for after we press the end button. But yeah, a lot of cool stories from back in the day, man. I remember being at ICO Alert when CryptoKitties dropped.
Yeah.
So I'm interested how you found yourself from those early 2013 days when it was mainly fungible tokens, right? Like, when did you first get introduced to NFTs and how did it hit you?
So without regressing back to like our early companies, so we launched a couple tokens, started with the Tokes platform, later became Multi-Chain Ventures. I left in 2020. That company's still moving, building some really cool stuff now. In fact, they're my co-founder on those early projects is now building Star Atlas, which is looking to be a wonderful NFT-based space epic MMO game. Shout out over there. Anyway, so fast forward, I remember 2017 seeing CryptoKitties and some of the early Ethereum-based NFTs, and they were on my radar. And I kind of thought they were a novelty, and this is an interesting piece of technology, but I also didn't immediately perceive them as a speculative asset or even something that people were going to give these wild valuations to. And admittedly, like early NFTs like the CryptoPunks weren't even on my radar until 2020. So I had been, sort of in and out of the space and through 2020, through the early pandemic. And then an associate of mine calls me one morning and he says, "Hey," he says, "I know you know how to use exchanges and sell crypto." He says, "I need to sell my CryptoPunk." And I said, "First of all, what's a CryptoPunk? And second of all, yes, I can show you how." But and that sort of just got my brain moving again. I was like, "Oh, it's an NFT. I'm familiar with these. I'm familiar with CryptoKitties that at one point bogged down the Ethereum network, 3 years ago or 4." And then I was off and running. The space is kind of intoxicating, and I immediately was just buying and trading and collecting and keeping my finger on the pulse. And then eventually reached out to a friend of mine who you've met as well, Keil, of the band Starfucker, and I said, "Hey, if you were going to produce an NFT, what is it that you would make?" And he says, "Well, I'd want to do something audiovisual as a musician." And then we got into some interesting tokenomics, and then Dreamloops was born. But my intro to NFTs was really only a year and change ago, really, from a real direct hands-on sort of way, even though I've been in the crypto space since 2013, and then in business and crypto since 2016. So
I want to have the broader NFT market discussion and your thoughts on kind of where we've come over the last year. But I think we made our way to Dreamloops, to that initial drop you guys have. So for someone that's maybe not initiated to what you guys are doing, what is Bitlectro Labs? And then what was that first drop that you guys launched, and how did it go?
Yeah, so Bitlectro Labs is my team. I co-founded it with Keil Corcoran of the indie band Starfucker. It's been around for over a decade now. They make really great music. But we're a team of developers and artists, and we produced Dreamloops, which was our first generative drop. It is 10,000 audiovisual NFTs. They are chiptune music, which is basically video game music, combined with pixel art. So both things that are near and dear to my heart and my co-founder's heart. We're 80s and 90s children that grew up on Nintendo and Sega Genesis, and in Keil's case, Commodore 64. He was an early computer user, so they're sort of an homage to that. But they do more than just display in your wallet as a pretty picture. So 1 in 5 is actually redeemable for a cassette tape or a vinyl record. I'm a collector of vinyl myself. Obviously, I have my old DJ setup here sitting behind me in my studio. But so they give more than just the digital NFT, if you will. And our goal as a team is to build more generative music releases. We also give the rights away for the music. So anyone that holds the NFT has a Creative Commons license to utilize the music in their podcast, indie game, Twitch stream, YouTube, etc. We've already seen a lot of that. It's quite fun. fact, someone made a mashup tool the other day to pull the music from our Dreamloops to combine them with blit maps from holders of that project, which is another pretty wild pixel art, 8-bit pixel art project. So yeah, so we're moving forward. Our next collection is going to be a generative collection of pixel art avatars. They're really tastefully done. I would argue they're some of the best looking pixel art I've seen in the NFT space. And frankly, they better be. Our artist has been working on them. Keil, of course, for he's been putting in 60-hour weeks almost since July working on these things.
Yeah.
Basically, after the Dreamloops launch, we were immediately moving on this new musical collection. For those that don't know, even some of our holders don't know, the musical collection for Dreamloops was produced using conventional studio software like Ableton and then reprocessed through a hacked NES cartridge. You can actually feed the NES cartridge MIDI inputs, and then it outputs new music for you using the chipset of the NES. So all of the music from Dreamloops is based in sounds and synthesized production that could be actually heard through an NES, through your old television, if you're playing this in the 80s. This new collection is going to be processed through a Sega Genesis modification. So it's still callbacks to vintage retro video games. And we're airdropping up to 5,000 of the Dreamers to our Dreamloops holders. So for every 2 Dreamloops that you own, you get 1 Dreamer, and then we're selling the rest. And the larger goal of the collection is that we're working on sort of an automated game. So I say game, it's not really something you necessarily play directly, because it's going to be something similar to Tasty Bet. I don't know if anyone here listening is familiar with this, but it's sort of like automated Street Fighter battles. So ours is going to be an automated turn-based combat simulator, kind of like an RPG like Final Fantasy or Shining Force, for those OGs that remember a lot of 90s overhead RPGs. So we're going to allow the holders of the Dreamers to basically enter this automated battle arena with their NFT, and they can wager a native ERC20 token in the battle arena, and they get the winnings. If they win the battle, there'll be modifiers, wearables, buffs for the characters. So we're creating a whole world around these characters. But we're probably about 9 months out from version 1 of that. We have been working on some of the gameplay, and we have some mock-ups and screens we'll share soon with our community and the like. But yeah, that's what we're working on behind the scenes.
Yeah, if you guys don't know or you guys haven't seen, please go into the description and check out Bitlectro Labs. The link will take you directly there, and you guys can actually go to their Twitter as well and see leaks of these Dreamers, which is really dope.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you have a PFP that, I mean, I know that's a low bar. Like, you guys are really exceeding that low bar. Just a picture with a face, and that's what's kind of selling. I mean, we're seeing text that's now selling for thousands of dollars. So with the Loop project, but it's awesome, man. Like, the leak that you guys launched or just dropped is just, I mean, the visuals look great. Like you said, some of the best pixel art that we've seen, and then you have the audio component as well. So yeah, I mean, just super excited. So I didn't have the details. I've been kind of leaking this to the community, the LADZ community, saying, hey, if you own Dreamloops, you're actually going to get drops. Has that snapshot been taken? Like, take me through that detail.
Yeah, so we're still several weeks out. Most of the assets are actually done. We're sort of finalizing the music, and Keil's never done when he's making whether art or music. So they just keep getting more additions and things, and we're adding foreground animations now. They're all animated, by the way. So every single character has background animation, and now over 90% also have a foreground animation, not to mention they also have music. So the collection keeps growing in terms of scope and features. So, eventually we zip it up and ship it out. But we're on the latter stages of asset production, but we've still got quite a bit of time until the collection launches. So we're targeting mid-October for the actual sale and distribution of the airdrop. So the snapshot will not occur probably until late September, early October, and we'll have specific details around when that snapshot's going to be taken. And then holders of Dreamloops will be able to claim the Dreamers just a couple weeks after that from the contract.
How is the
So
community?
we're super excited.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited. How has the community building been going since the launch, and what are some things maybe that when you guys first started to now you're like, man, I just didn't expect that, or I've just
Right.
gained that knowledge.
It's been good. Overall, I think there's certain points that we could have done better, certain things we could have done better. There's also aspects of the project that we didn't know had a lot of perceived value from the community. Like we didn't realize that one of the pieces that our users would glean onto was the Creative Commons license around the music of the collection. And then I got a ton of DMs both in the lead up and then following the launch of Dreamloops. They're like, "Can you clarify what I can use this for? Tell me what's the extent of this license." And I was like, "Wow, I legitimately did not know that there were that many people that were interested in using our chip tunes on on their various pieces of art." So I think the thing that we're probably working on improving on the most is our messaging. You know, being consistent, being clear. We actually, in fact, onboarded a new community manager. His name's Davey. He's worked in a number of crypto projects, both with me in the past, as well as on some other Ethereum-based projects dating back to 2016, 2017. So he's a veteran in the space. We brought him in to help with outreach to our community and to help answer people's direct questions. So I think yeah, as a small team, you know, there are 5 of us now, 6, and then a few other collaborators on like the business development strategy side. We're realizing, yeah, you need all hands on deck interfacing directly with your community. And I don't want to say at all times, but it is a 24-hour space. You know, we have holders in Australia, we have holders in Europe, and I realize, well, I can't be there every single day. Not to mention, I'm trying to, you know, project manage the production of our smart contracts and the back end for the game, and or, you know, oversee UI UX development, all of these things. So we need more front facing people, and we've taken steps to move that forward. But our community is great. We have a real interesting set of diehards that, you know, we have private channels just for holders, but then we have our public channels. And like on the daily, I see new pieces of art that people have made around our collection. We just had a member that got married, and he showed a picture of him and his wife holding hands with their rings, and there were some nice prints of some of our collection behind them. And I was like, did he have Dreamloops at his wedding? Like, that's wild. So there's lots of pieces of art that are you know, wonderful homages to our collection, which we're honored by. We put our heart and soul and energy into this, and a lot of people say, oh, it's just pixel art, but I mean, we literally have hundreds of hours invested in the production of that, and it's not just some cash grab. I mean, this was a labor of love for myself and Keil, not to mention our other team members. So, but our community has been super supportive of that, and super just enthusiastic about the future of the project. And I realize, you know, you tend to capture the energy you put out, and we have a demographic of collectors that's very similar to our team makeup in many instances. You know, they're people who are nostalgic for the 80s and 90s, and, you know, now might be approaching middle age like myself, and you know, have this wonderful nostalgia, but also have these interesting technical and professional backgrounds. So it's been fun. It's been fun exploring that and getting to know our community, and it's growing too. We've only leaked a little bit of that Dreamers collection. Like we haven't even officially started marketing. Like we haven't changed our updated our site for that messaging yet. We're about to, you know, turn that faucet on and really pour it on to try to bring some new users into the community. But man, we've seen a ton of new people coming in just off of a few leaks. So I'm really excited to see who else jumps on board once we start showing more of the Dreamers collection.
Yeah, it's been an amazing ride here in the NFT space, and you guys are creating a great product, right? Like, we're gonna have the market discussion here in a second. I think it's getting a little frothy with all the kind of, you know, copy products, and people are always asking, you know, what can I invest in at this point, or what projects did I get involved in? Well, it's the teams that clearly are putting a fair amount of time in this, like all giving it their all, and you guys are doing that. It's very, very clear. So super stoked to follow your guys's. Yeah, man. I'm just, these are the type of projects you guys want to get involved in. So I'm interested. I want to talk about that copyright thing because you guys have, you know, obviously been asked a bunch of times. I'm sure you've gone to a couple lawyers or what have you. What does NFT copyright even look like? Like, that's something I haven't gotten into myself, and you guys are in this. And how does this all work?
Yeah. So I think it's a moving target right now. I think the community, the teams, we're still sort of figuring out what this looks like moving forward. That being said, there are many projects, including our own, that grant the user, what are functionally, unlimited licensing to utilize the works in whatever they care to do. So our license just requires you to basically credit us as, hey, these are the creators, but I can use this for whatever I damn well please. Whether you want to put it in a video game, on your podcast, TV show, whatever it happens to be. The Bored Apes did something similar with their profile pics, right? So you can utilize the ape as much as you want, but then you can't use their branding, right? So it's kind of this interesting line that you can't cross. But I do think it creates a lot of novelty, because now suddenly someone's buying a piece of IP that they can then monetize. So that has a lot of implications, because right now we don't seem to have digital or technological infrastructure for you to necessarily capitalize on that monetization, right? So we as creators can take our derivatives from peer-to-peer sales on a secondary marketplace like OpenSea. There's no way for me to take something that I'm buying on the secondary market from creator X and say, okay, well, I now own these and I'm going to license these out to Y and Z. Now, how do I structure my residual model? Like, that's still built on trust and contracts and conventional media distribution models. So we're still figuring out what this looks like. In fact, someone asked me recently, we had another collection that included some of our art. So we had to get permission from the holders of those particular pieces to say, yeah, I'll sign off on this. You can include my pieces in your collection. And one of them directly asked me, said, how do I collect residuals? And I said, well, we don't really have infrastructure for that. But if you want to ask the creators directly, see if they'll chip you off a percentage. So there's levels to the game. There's levels to how this works that we haven't yet fully, I would say, thought through, because clearly we're thinking through it, right? But there needs to be technology solutions that allow for the sub licensing if we're to see secondary monetization from holders of some of this IP. So a lot of it's lip service until it's actualized, right? So I do think music is a low-hanging fruit, because there's a lot of content creators that are not musicians that need music. So it's very easy to say, hey, I have a generative NFT music collection. Come in, look at what you like, buy one of these. We grant you a license for it. You don't have to do anything else. Please credit us. As such, that's sort of the immediate way that we see this in action. And I've seen this with other generative music collections as well. And I hope that continues to grow, but we do need some more pieces of infrastructure around that to sort of codify what it looks like for the user. We get questions about it constantly.
Well, it's such an interesting conversation, because the whole blockchain movement started with Bitcoin, which is basically like, F you, I'm doing what I want. I can do whatever I and that's the conversation people have, is like, this is the crypto space. This is a place where you should be able to, be at will and just, do anything. But I had a derivative created of my ape. It was one of those people just reaching out saying, hey, I'll create XYZ for you. And I said yes, just randomly, just to try it out. But it was a weird feeling, because now that person owned the asset and I didn't, and I was never going to see any, residuals from that. Like you were saying, it's just it's a fascinating conversation to me, man. So
and something it's emerging. I think we're going to quickly have solutions for these types of things, and I can prototype mentally like a few very quick ones. Like OpenSea has its derivative payment structure for collections. This could they could very easily develop some sort of feature within their system that would allow for sub-derivative payments of owners, and some request system, or maybe even some linkage system wherein you tie a new derivative collection to an existing NFT project and funnel some of the proceeds back. I mean, these aren't necessarily wicked problems when it comes to development, but obviously someone needs to invest their time in such a structure. But I'd like to see us move in that direction. Not that everything in NFTs needs to be about monetization and remonetization. There's a lot of fun in this space. A lot of it's art, a lot of it's just fun collectibles. But people are asking and thinking about these things, and we know there's just a lot of capital in this space right now, and someone needs to solve some of these problems moving forward and establish best practices. Be good shepherds of the space. So, and we hope to be one of those teams as well. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you guys are attacking this and being asked those questions, because it shows that, like you said, music is an easy one where the conversation is going to happen a lot. So then through that, we can start to move our way forward, man. Interesting. Interesting times when you're building at the fringes. You like run into a wall and you're like, what do I do here? But yeah. I want to talk about PFP projects, man. I think obviously that is the belle of the ball, the flavor of the month, if you will, of NFTs. What do you make being a PFP project? Well, not necessarily, but you guys are launching one
now. Yeah. Exactly.
What do you make of the whole craze that's happened over the past 6 months?
It's a fascinating social experiment. As a social scientist, to put back on my behavioral econ cap, if you will, or my psychologist cap, it's sort of, I feel like it's a natural product for NFTs because of the immediate utility. And admittedly, I don't always love that word utility as it's applied to NFTs, because a lot of the things that we call utility are more like perks or bonuses. And also you're kind of dealing with the financial product, so we need to be very careful about the language we pick for some of the perks, if you will. And I've seen some really interesting models that are proposed. But when you think of digital art or digital imagery, like the natural thing is a profile pic. Why? Because we have so many social media channels. And I'm watching this develop, and I'll have friends that are hardened crypto traders that don't understand NFTs. And I say, no, you're looking at this from the wrong angle. The natural sort of analog of NFTs it's not cryptocurrency. It's streetwear, it's hypebeast culture. It's a lot of these things. Now, is there also potentially a fine art component? Is there a collectible component? Yes. But in the profile pics where there's just rampant speculation and wild price valuations, and I participated in this myself. I'm a Bored Ape holder, Mutant holder, Shiba holder. I mean, Oni. I love these projects. But it also is a way for people to flex on the internet. And we naturally do this with our various physical amenities, whether it's our clothing, our cars, our watches, our eyewear. We socially signal. And profile pictures have become, within the NFT space, a way that we're extending this social signaling into digital spaces. And I think that's natural. And it creates a marketplace that has real value. Like, there's no way for you to flex, your Beamer on the internet without, posting it on your feed. But you can buy an ape and you can put it on your Twitter profile and say, "I'm a member of this club." Now, that might seem to some, repugnant based on the valuations here. However, there's a lot of kinship between these communities, and I see a lot of interesting stuff. Like, take the Bored Apes as a prime example. Like the fact that they were able to donate, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of now to primate animal rescues. And if you look at that percentage donated as a, in the grand scheme of the income they've derived off these profile pics, that would be like the equivalent of a company like Amazon or Google, donating hundreds of millions to like animal foundations. Like, they're not doing that. So people are like, "Oh, there's so much money for these pics. It's gross." I'm like, yeah, but look at what these teams are doing. Like, they probably gave these animal rescue foundations like the most they've ever received in donations in any given year. So so I'm off on sort of a tangent now. No. But as a social phenomenon, like it's just fascinating to me, and I'm all for it. I think we need to get to the point where we can start linking these online identities to the wallets and ownership. And we've seen a few projects doing this. Like, there's plugins for Twitter that allow people in browser to see your NFT collection, and people are doing so with vanity addresses. But it's allowing us to form these sort of meta personas. And I guess I don't mean metaverse directly, but internet personas. Yeah, it depends on where you draw the line of metaverses, right? We have our infrastructure metaverses like Decentraland, like CryptoVox, Sandbox, and then you have the metaverse in a social aspect like Twitter. But it's allowing people to establish some online identity and presence and kinship and group identity. So, like, a lot of the social dynamics we see in the real world, and as a social scientist, as someone that looks at cultural interaction, a lot of that is steeped in political identity, worldview, interests, hobbies, but it's a lot of it's also steeped in visual identity. We all present in a certain way, and you tend to find flocks of people with similar fashion sense moving together, right? That's part of their cultural signaling. You could argue these profile pics are also part of people's cultural signaling, but in an online way that they've never been able to do before. And I think that's freaking fascinating. So it's in-group identity. Like, hey, I'm doing this NFT thing. I have interest in this new emerging form of media. I'm a member of this collector set. This is something I like to talk about. It's there's all sorts of things you're saying there implicitly. So
what a cool,
anyway, sorry, continue.
No, what a cool fucking conversation we're having, man. I love that you have that behavioral psychology background. And that you're doing audio, right? Because one thing that just clicked with me is like how we were signaling when I was growing up on MySpace, for example.
Yeah.
It wasn't visual, it was audio. It was, hey, you come onto my profile and check out what song I'm playing that day. That doesn't exist on Twitter right now, right? Like you said, you're signaling more through a photo. But what if you could signal through audio and it be
I would
an
love
NFT?
to see that. Yeah, that's funny. It's funny you brought up MySpace. I haven't thought about that in ages, but I remember before you could embed songs directly, you had to just link an MP3 file that you hosted somewhere else. So you had to have a little bit of HTML knowledge to put it in there. Yeah, I remember that. I remember friends asking me like, "Oh, did you see what I changed my profile song to?" I was like, "Oh no, I didn't click on your profile that day." And they'd be like, "Oh man, why aren't you looking at my page? Why aren't you in my top 8?" Anyway, etc. But yeah, I mean, again, like those were early pieces in in online communities that allowed us to socially signal and establish some in-group identity with people of similar interests. And now it's like people are sort of we've drifted away from MySpace, we've drifted away from Facebook. And now like the main social media platform it tends to be Instagram for many people and or Twitter. But Twitter and Instagram, lack the technology, the accoutrements you had of MySpace or Facebook in terms of like showing people your hobbies, interests. And now we've brought NFTs into the mix, and it's allowing people to resignal some of that. I would love to see music integration. Back to your point. Like, yeah, like let me pick a song for my Twitter profile, or let me share a playlist with you. I can of course link a playlist, but it's something missing in the construction of this online identity, I suppose.
It's like not as holistic. Like they're all like very specifically focused on one thing, and Facebook really brought it all together, or MySpace did. But man, all right, I'm talking way too much. I want you to
Oh no, you're not. I'm talking way too much. We can make this more conversational. I go on these rants when I've had my morning coffee. So here I am.
So where do you think we're headed as far as this cycle? Because one of the things I was saying, maybe even just 2 or 3 weeks ago, was I love the fact that in this cycle, as opposed to the ICO cycle, the raises were smaller. You're raising $1 to $2 million, and you have the royalty factor that's more long-term based than raising $40 million all at once for a white paper. It's like, yeah, of course the team ghosted. I mean, what incentive do they have? But then you see Bored Ape come through and raise $90 million in about an hour. Probably a lot less than that. Through their Mutant Ape sale. I think it was like less than 10 minutes or something like that. But
it was so fast. Yeah.
So are we at a top-ish point in this cycle? Or like there's so many parallels to 2013, 2016, 17. Where do you think, based on your experience, that we're at?
I'm always cautiously optimistic. Like I believe in the technology, and I think with any sufficiently evolved piece of tech, it often interweaves its way into our lives in ways that we don't necessarily detect. So, I foresee a few years from now, people are going to be utilizing NFTs in various mobile apps or on their desktops too, or in online games, and not know that they're trading in NFTs or they're displaying NFTs, because it'll just be a feature that's rather innocuously placed into whatever mobile application they're using, game or otherwise. But in terms of the current space, you mentioned like the valuations are smaller, and because of that, I still think this has legs. I have friends, recently that are just getting into NFTs, but have been crypto investors and speculators for 5-6 years now, and I think it's still quite early. The valuations are still small in terms of total market capitalization compared to cryptocurrency, not to mention like consumer goods. Like, what Funko, I think is a publicly
Mm-hmm.
traded company. I am a collector. If I pan my camera around this room, you'd see all sorts of interesting ephemera. I admittedly do not have Funko characters, but I look at that. I'm like, their company's worth hundreds of millions, if I'm not mistaken. I'm like, that is a crazy market capitalization for someone that's making these little figurines.
Mm-hmm.
I think NFTs have much more room to grow. Are we going to continue to see these massive valuations on profile pics? I don't know. Maybe. I think some of the blue chip stuff is going to stay. I don't see the punks losing value anytime soon. I don't see the Bored Apes losing value anytime soon. Are there a lot of cash grabby projects that are not offering either for the utility, community support, or even marketing for their collections? Yeah, we see a little bit of that, and many of those will go the way of the dinosaur. But I still think this has legs, despite concerns I have. And I guess some of my biggest concerns right now are the viability of Ethereum as a network to continue launching these things. The gas prices have gotten out of control, and that is making it prohibitive for new users to participate in the process in a very meaningful and direct, day one way. I do like that many projects are whitelisting buyers now and allowing people to get in early without having to battle in the gas war of a public drop.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some huge barriers to entry. So I think for us to continue growing as an ecosystem, there needs to be maybe some serious updates to Ethereum's protocols, or B, people need to start exploring additional chains, whether it's side chains like Matic or Solana or even Wax. These are all viable options, even though I know the capital is not in those marketplaces. But I mean, it's still so early, like 10,000 for a collection. That's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I look at, we can compare the total valuation of, or that we can, obviously as individual assets, some of these prices are just absolutely crazy. But in the grand scheme of markets, of physical art, commercial art as a marketplace, and it is a marketplace. I mean, the commercial art world, the fine art world is its own fascinating beast, because I'd say it's less honest than we immediately perceive it to be. It's often a way for rich collectors to avoid taxation or to launder money through these collectible fine art assets. But NFTs, we see maybe a little bit of that, but it's still such a drop in the bucket in the context of all of these other things, and it's an emerging space and it's here to stay. So, yeah, that was a long-winded answer, but in the immediate, I think we're still growing. I'm expecting through the end of the year just to see more innovation, better artists getting involved, better teams getting involved, more reputability. I'd like to see more teams be public. We've been very outward with who we are. Like, hey, these are my devs. This is my co-founder. This is who's producing your work. This is my marketing guy, and this is who I'm working with. This is who's releasing this. And I don't like that many teams are not identifying who their core members are.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's hard because, as developers or as artists, they may not be the most outward extrovert types of individuals that want to come on and talk to you or talk to Buffalo. That being said, at least, demonstrate who you are, demonstrate your credibility, give us something to sink our teeth into. And then I see, scandals around, projects that will remain unnamed, where we see it's the same dev team producing 5 or 6 launches and not identifying who's behind it. That doesn't give me a good sense of provenance or make me feel good about the long-term viability of the project. So I think we are experiencing these growing pains. Not to mention, this is very much a repeat of the ICO craze in 2016, yep. 2017. Many teams were able to tokenize and launch projects with either bogus teams, bogus advisory boards, or no public identification of their team members to begin with. So we're kind of seeing a redux of that. And, the growing pains are good. People are going to want that. They're going to want to see who's behind the projects. And I'm glad we can be a good steward or good shepherd of that moving forward in the space.
It seems like a little bit of the discussion that we were having on copyright kind of finds its way into here, where you want the utopian vision of full decentralization, all like you can have anonymous teams and be successful, yada yada yada. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to meet in the middle, right? You kind of have, like, that's why you want to see the teams out there. You want to have a face to the franchise a little bit. So Yeah, I appreciate that answer, man. So,
Great.
you mentioned layer twos, you mentioned whitelisting. I want to talk about whitelisting a little bit, because I do see the viability of that. Is it a
Right.
little bit too much of a gate for new people to get in when you are whitelisting,
Yeah.
and you kind of you almost make the rich richer at that point? I mean, it's good for your community, don't get me wrong, but does it gate new users from getting in when there's a whitelist opportunity?
Yeah, I do think so. It's tricky. It's tricky even for myself. Like I don't have the time to devote to promo another project that I want to ape into so I can just get on a whitelist. Like it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna, spend 6 hours today, tweeting about, project X just so I can get added to their contract for an early purchase. So let alone a new user that either doesn't have an online persona, doesn't utilize channels like Discord that we're using primarily for communication with teams. Yes, it can be prohibitive. And I do think there's an imperative both among teams and collectors to bring new people into the space, right? We need broader visibility if we're going to continue to see this ecosystem grow and flourish. So I think there are ways that you can implement whitelisting processes that are less prohibitive. We're sort of internally discussing various ways that we can do this for our own drop, whether it's a lottery system or something that's a little more fair. Again, it's tricky because you're dealing with a space where there can be a lot of rogue actors who will make 20 Twitter accounts so they can get 20 entries into your lottery, or will make 20 MetaMask addresses. And I've seen this with online giveaways we've done for our online parties, and we try to detect it, we try to suss them out, but it's these are very tricky social problems when you're dealing with anonymous or pseudo-anonymous figures trying to get access to a digital good with no KYC requirement. So the whitelisting is imperfect. I do think it is a step in the right direction. I think the biggest problem, however, is Ethereum's tricky to work with. Yes, we all know how to buy and sell through MetaMask, through OpenSea. We can mint from a contract. There's the trick of some users going directly to Etherscan and interacting with the mint function of the contract directly. That's become a problem, almost to a point where I feel like maybe it would be better if teams did not publish the contract fully until after launch, so that people can't mint directly from the contract, publish it after. And then, of course, I mentioned sidechains. We are moving eventually to Polygon, to Matic. At least that's within our development forecast, because we're trying to build this battle arena, this game. The feature set and the way that we functionally spec'd out this product, it would not function on Ethereum because the fees would be too much in its current state. Mm-hmm. That being said, we've seen notable projects create these wonderful ecosystems, whether it's Avagachi, Zed Run, upcoming Chicken Derby, all Matic based. Why? Because it's cheap, it's fast, the users can afford it. But then you look at the drops there too, and the drops end up being a little more fair. Why? Because someone can up their gas, if they're savvy enough to edit, the GUI and the max gas fee within their MetaMask wallet on Matic, and still it only costs them $1 or $2, yep. Even if they're going 10x the gas fee. So I think that's one of the greatest mediators, is being on a network where it's cost effective for users to ape in without risking spending hundreds of dollars in gas that they're not going to get back for a product they weren't able to purchase to begin with. So I think a lot of these problems endemic to the current state of drops go away if Ethereum produces I say Ethereum as if it's a a company. I mean, it's really it's a decentralized network. Foundation. If we see a viable network update that moves it to proof of stake. That being said, I don't think we're going to see that by the end of year, and it is going to be a battle. As someone that's been in this space for years, anytime there's a proposed network update to a decentralized system where there's miners involved, if you're hurting someone's bottom line, they're gonna battle you. And right now, there's a lot of hash power aggregated in a handful of Ethereum pools that may or may not be in favor of a proof of stake model, depending on how it hurts their revenue stream. So. We're in for an interesting discussion over the next year around all of that. That being said, as it pertains to NFTs, that's our biggest hurdle right now is the current proof of work nature of the Ethereum network. So
I was surprised the latest update got passed through. It was like a real big hit to miners. It had something to do with tipping. You could tip instead of the fees that they were getting. Something that really hurt the miners that got passed through in Berlin, I believe, in the Berlin update. But I do want to get to one piece because we are getting to the end of the episode here. Reputation as it's related to. Let me touch on this last part first because we were just talking
Sure.
about moving to Polygon. I think there is a little bit of tribalism involved. You do have like ETH people not wanting to move to Polygon when it's a clear
Right.
answer. Do you think that's a big impediment to maybe Polygon, Solana, all of these, that you have users that are like, I'm staying on Ethereum no matter what?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and this again, this is the social scientist hat. We have our teams, whether it's sports teams, we have our favorite celebrities, artists, TV shows. Um, Somehow this is also interjected itself into personal investments, among retail investors. Like you can look at recent rises and GameStop or AMC, and how there's these camps pumping stocks. Not to mention how this has always been the case in crypto. You have Bitcoin maximalists, you have Ethereum maximalists, and now you have people becoming maximalists for other third-party tokens. Um, it's strange because the less risk averse approach to this, you've got to have some risk appetite to get into the space to begin with. The way to mitigate some of that risk is to spread it around, to build a healthy portfolio of products and your personal investments. Not to mention with your NFTs. And unfortunately, there are people, we got a lot of pushback. We considered launching our next product on Polygon just natively with no Ethereum drop for the profile pics. And we sort of workshopped it and publicly tested it and got a lot of feedback from our community. And the pushback was enormous. And I thought, like, it's solidity based. You just have to add a network to your MetaMask to have access to it. We're capitalized to actually give you some Matic so you can start playing with this and transacting it on it, or play with some of the other products that are out there in the space. And people are like, no, I'm staying with Ethereum. I'm like, what do you mean staying with? You don't have to leave it. You just have to introduce this new thing. And by the way, it's natively supported in OpenSea now. So it's weird. I think a lot of that is a learning deficit. I don't think it's necessarily going to be an impediment forever. I think a lot of it is endemic to the fact that people don't necessarily know how easy it is to get onto some of these side chains. It's a different story entirely if you're talking about Solana or say Wax, where you have to manage a new wallet. There's a new marketplace. The process is different. The fee structures are different. But for something like Polygon, where it's literally the same process as Ethereum-based NFTs, the pushback is fascinating. And I think part of the tribalism that I perceive is maybe also a byproduct of lack of understanding among the collector set of how easy it is. And I think we're starting to reduce that barrier. OpenSea natively integrating Polygon was a huge win. That only happened within the last 6 months because you used to have to go to matic.opensea.io just to get access to those, and now we don't. So it's getting easier. But I don't think we're at a space yet where we're going to get every Ethereum user on board playing with Polygon NFTs. So.
I will say, I mean, you're much more of an OG than I am, but I consider myself an OG having gotten in 16. Yeah, I didn't even want to move. The Avagachi team was the one that was like, listen, we're moving. We don't care. We are moving. Here's a cool little interface that we have that you could swap, and that. So they made it easier, which I think, to your point, is the right move. But if you're listening to this right now and you're not on Matic, it is very easy to do. It's a 5-minute process, if that. And then swapping over is not that hard. And once you're there, it's so much better. I will say there is an argument to be made on the other side of this. I think when people say it's a feature and not a bug, right? You see a lot of money on the ETH ecosystem. You don't see a lot of big. I mean, you see some, but until there's a lot of large sales on the Polygon side, it does become this like cool club where this is where the money's made. This is where the money's at.
I would agree with that, but we are reaching a point where the gas fees are just so exorbitant. It's making it harder, particularly for smaller cap projects, to thrive and flourish or experience peer-to-peer sales. Like we're even on the cusp of that. We had an incredibly low mint price by NFT standards at the time of our drop. Now our floor price is higher than our mint price, obviously, but when you're still in those low, fractional ranges, it makes it very hard for new users to get on board if they have to pay almost the equivalent price in gas to get access to your project. So I think it's becoming an impediment. But yes, like you need to price accordingly with some of that in mind, so that the secondary valuation of the project can reach a price point or price discovery, wherein the gas fee for minting is encompassed into that new valuation. So it's, yeah, incredibly tricky. Also, shout out to Avagachi. They were my intro to a Polygon Matic for NFTs. And I remember reading their Wikipedia, their guide on how to onboard and describing the process. You want to talk about good shepherds of the space. Like, I love the Avagachi team. Like, I would love to collaborate with them at some juncture. Shout out if you're watching, guys. But one of my favorite projects. I got in on their first haunt. I actually gave away one of my early portals to an associate of mine as like a thank you for some work he was doing on Dreamloops. And now it's worth 10 times what it was when I gave it to him. And I'm like, here you go. Like, anyway, but what a wonderful project. So yeah,
absolutely, man. So great conversation that we're having. So yeah, definitely shout out to Avagachi, but awesome episode as well that we had here. I want to kind of cap it off here. Anything you have as it's related to Dreamloops or Dreamers or Bitlectro Labs, drop it here, and then we'll hop out of the episode.
Man, now I'm on the spot. Yeah, check us out, bitlectrolabs.com. Join our Discord, discord.gg/bitlectro. We are doing some new leaks today. We're going to share a few more from the upcoming collection. And then hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll share some screens from the battle arena. And yeah, just keep an eye out. We're doing a lot of cool stuff. Also, we do our monthly metaverse parties. I've got one coming at the end of the month. Crypto Voxels. We're moving to a bigger gallery. Hoping to have some really cool guests from our stable of DJs this month, and onboard some new musicians. So yeah, we're just having a lot of fun, frankly. This is a very interesting time in my life to be able to play in an emerging, digital art, digital collectible space, and do cool things that people take a lot of joy from. So come join us in the Discord and be a part of our journey. It's been fun.
I think attacking metaverse events is another intro into the space for a lot of people, and it will be. But that's a story for another time. We're going to have you guys on NFT Live. We're going to be, hosting co-hosting the monthly metaverse party as well, from our joint place in the Crypto Voxels. Just a little bit of an alpha leak there, but man, I appreciate you so much, man. We've gotten to know you over the last 2 months, and thank you so much for just being who you are and letting us come on board.
High praise. Thank you, Q. I appreciate you guys as well. I think in terms of other good shepherds, good stewards of the space, everyone over at LADZ City is doing a good job as well. My wife is actually one of my quick litmus tests. She'll overhear me on calls with people, and she'll say, "Oh, the NFT Live guys, I literally like those guys." Like, she smells when there's a bad actor in play, and she said nothing but things of high praise about you and the crew. So thanks for having me on. It's an honor.
Awesome. All right, guys, that was the Layer 1 podcast. Bitlectro Labs, they have a launch here at the end of September, I believe. I don't want to put words in Gabe's mouth there, but they have an upcoming launch that you guys should be on the lookout for with their Dreamer sale. And this was a great episode. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.
Cheers.